Should be live. I don't know what to say.
Screening application. Oh, hold on. Just give it a second.
Which one is showing? Oh, okay, cool.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's live presentation on using the customer grain in your restaurant reporting. Mirus CEO Dave Bennett will be discussing how to track your customers' visits and purchases to better understand what is working and what is not. Just a few things before we get started today to give everyone a chance to join. First, be sure you're following us on all of our social pages, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. We share informational articles and love to share information about our clients, and we would love if you share the things you find on Mirus through your social channels as well. Next, be sure to subscribe to the Mirus blog where we share informational content like today's presentation. If you go to mirus.com, you'll find links to all of our social pages. Now we're just about ready to get started with today's presentation. Let us know you're here by giving us a like or commenting in the comment box. A few things about today's presentation. This is a live broadcast, and if you happen to lose the feed, just refresh your browser and you should be reconnected. We expect this presentation to last about 15 to 20 minutes. We will be pausing for questions periodically during the presentation, so if you have any questions, please type it in the comment box and we will try to answer as many questions as we can. Any questions that are not answered during the live broadcast will be answered in the comments following the presentation. And this presentation will be saved and available to view on Facebook. And now to introduce today's presenter, Mirus CEO Dave Bennett. Mirus collects granular level data. Let's say that again. Mirus collects granular level detail from hundreds of different systems for thousands of restaurants across the country. Since 1999, we have helped measure and improve business performance through custom data warehousing, powerful reporting filters, automated calculations and alerts, and unrivaled customer support. Dave will be discussing how to track your customers' visits and purchases to better understand what is working and what is not. Here is Dave.
Thank you, Leslie. Just want to make sure that can somebody give a wave of the hand if the audio on this feed is good? If somebody could comment on that to that effect, that would be a good guidance for us. My name's Dave Bennett. I am the CEO of Mirus, and today we're going to discuss a topic that is of growing importance to every type of restaurant, the customer grain. For most of the history of the restaurant industry, we have operated without knowing much of our loyal customers. There are exceptions, of course, such as pizza delivery, where delivery is an expected component of that operation. And they get the virtue of being able to identify, street address, name, email address, telephone number for those deliveries. But for most restaurants, knowing specifics about each of your customers is something we've dreamed about, but rarely have experienced. Today, the competitiveness and shifting preferences of a new generation make it imperative for every restaurant to understand all you can learn about your customer. Leslie has already run through our commercial here, but I'll just highlight. Mirus was launched in 1999 to bring web-based data solutions to the restaurant industry. We have built a platform that lets restaurant operators report and analyze all of their data in one place from any device. Our clients use nearly 100 unique systems to run their businesses, and we transform all of that data so it can easily be examined and studied. This is the last commercial, I promise. All right. This century, restaurants have been hit with a flood. When I say this century, 21st century, has been hit with a flood of data from many news sources. At the start of the century, most restaurants did not have access to the details of every guest check. Today, most restaurants have access to that type of detail. Similarly, labor scheduling, speed of service, customer loyalty, online ordering, and delivery are all generating new sets of data for the restaurant to consume. You almost certainly have data on the decisions made by your customer that are captured in the POS check level detail. However, we continue to have only spotty knowledge of name, email, phone number, age, and a host of other information on the customer. More importantly, as we will learn, there is no way to knit together the multiple sources of customer data into a comprehensive database. Customer grain is the most important new collection of data for most restaurants. It will allow operators to develop more intimate relationships with each customer. In some ways, this is the end of the one-size-fits-all marketing approach that has been the dominant model for chain restaurants for the past 50 years. Let's start with the basics. Just what is a grain? It's pretty simple. A grain is merely a collection of dimensions that describe a thing. There are a lot of things in the restaurant industry. There are days of the week, all of that, menu items, employees, minutes, revenue centers or destinations, discounts, and of course, there's the restaurant itself. You can see examples here of sample dimensions of day in store. There is no limit to the number of dimensions within a grain. So within the day grain, whether you have just what we have listed here, day of week, Gregorian date, week, period, and year, or you go on to fiscal calendars, for example, and you have your fiscal year definition that is different than the Gregorian definition. There can be as many ways as you can imagine for defining what a day is. A day is part of a century, for example. It's not listed here, right? 21st century. And then there's the restaurant itself. And while, typically people might think of these 5 or so ways of describing a store, we have clients that have used up to 40 or 50 different dimensions to describe their restaurants. And certainly when you get into things like franchising, where your franchise operator is actually operating the restaurant, there could be a whole bunch of dimensions that are describing that operator in that location. Here's a visual that shows the relationship that grains have and how they relate to measures. This is sometimes referred to as a star schema due to its shape. You can see that with this model, you can examine sales by any combination of grains. Simply, you can look at sales by day or by minute, sales by employee, sales by revenue center, sales by menu item, otherwise known as a product mix report. But in this model, you can also combine the various grains that you're using to examine the data. So you could look at by minute the sales of drink items by employee through the drive-through, and that combination of grains in examining the measures is a fundamental part of analytics in an analytics architecture. I have thrown an awful lot in a very short period of time. So now's a good time to see, do we have any questions out there that folks would like to clarify or ask at this stage of the game? If you haven't participated in a Facebook Live session before, it's just utilize the comments section to the right of your screen, and feel free to type any question that you might have along the way. Okay, so we've talked about what a grain is. Now, what's the customer grain? Again, it is a collection of dimensions that describe your customer. Your customer's a human being, so that could be height and weight, although unlikely. More likely to be name and email address, maybe a cell phone number. If it's delivery based or not, street address and city, state, and maybe even a conversion date, the date that you captured that customer's identifying information. The day, if you will, the row was inserted into the customer grain. And that way you can measure not only their activity, but how long have they been acting and what trends have existed during that time. And of course, age and birthday are other examples. Some examples that maybe aren't top of mind that could be dimensions of customer include handles for Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, any identification similar to email, but any identifier that is held unique within a population could be a very good dimension to use. Dimensions in analytics, in reporting, there's two ways that dimensions are really used. The first is to summarize results. So looking at, for example, all of the sales activity of your customers who are part of your loyalty program versus all of the customers and their activity that are not part of your loyalty program would be a simple use of a dimension that indicates whether or not that customer is part of the loyalty program. The other use of a dimension is to filter and to restrict the result set, to filter out certain populations of customers. So maybe all you want to do is study customers who show up at lunch during the week versus your weekend dinner customers as an alternative. And then there's dimensions that you might be able to create on the fly based on observations. So you could indicate that certain customers are high spending or low spending or average spending, a type of segmentation, if you will, based on some dollar amount that means something to your business. So in some businesses, if somebody spends $10 per check, that would be a high spender. In others, it might be $50 per person. But the spending, the frequency of visit, are they showing up more than twice a month, 0 to 2 times a month, or 1 time a year? That might be a frequency dimension that you can maintain. And a couple of others that I mentioned, things like weekend and weekday customers, visitors. All of those dimensions will potentially be very useful in analyzing your results and in determining what pieces work and what pieces don't work so well. All right, so we've covered the grain. What is a customer grain? Some example dimensions. Now, where does all that stuff come from? Where do you, as the restaurant operator, look to extract all of this wonderful information that we're going to analyze? Here's a list of systems. It's not intended to be exhaustive. There could very well be other programs that you operate. For example, one of our clients operates a wine club, and I know they have a very robust, 100,000 people or something like that in their wine club database. And they have a lot of great customer dimensional information in there. But point of sale is an obvious one. Point of sale, when we started back in the day, the laws were all different related to check detail. And while most companies didn't have check detail back in 1999 or 2000, it was kind of like the wild, wild west, because there really weren't any laws that restricted what you could do with it. All 16 digits back then were exposed. Today, you have to live with the last 4 digits, but you do have some other markers that uniquely identify that customer. The last 4 digits combined with the card type, Visa, MasterCard, and so forth, and the name on that card gets you, at least for an individual restaurant, gets you to a fairly unique identifier. Certainly, you could expect that to be unique within a 3-mile radius or so. Some of the other places, loyalty programs, as I mentioned, typically they'll have email address and cell phone and a whole bunch of other things that people disclose when they opt in. Reservations, whether they're third party or through an internally developed reservation program, there's typically lots of good dimensional information about the guest who's making the reservation. One of the challenges when it comes to using a single customer grain and not one for each of these systems, one of the challenges is linking the information across systems. And to do that, you need a reliable key, a reliable way of recognizing this person is the same person. And if all you had was the spelling of their name, then that would be a fairly weak way. In fact, you might not have their name in all of these situations, like gift cards, for example, or customer feedback. You may not actually have the name of the person. But even if you did have the name across all of these possible sources, the spelling could be different. In one case, it could be a formal spelling like David. In another, it's an informal spelling like Dave. And if you were just relying on name as the way to link the data across these systems, then you can see that would fail on occasion. So the point I want to stress here in today's program is as you roll out these various systems, customer feedback systems or delivery systems or gift cards, try to capture as much as you can. Yeah, to the extent that your vendor allows you to, try to capture as much dimensional information about the customer consistently across these systems, more than just name. If it's name, email address, and telephone, and you always ask for those 3 pieces of information across all of these potential sources. Of course, at the point of sale, you won't know that, but you do have a name. The more dimensions you design into your transactional systems, the better opportunity you have to find reliable ways of linking it all together so that you get a much better, almost 360-degree view of the customer by linking the data across these systems. Again, Twitter and Facebook handles are also awesome, consistent ways of linking data. All right, so now that we have it, what do we do about it, right? There's obviously measurement, mixed in with what I talked about earlier, which is the groupings and excluding, and so measuring the frequency, right? Some of the examples I gave earlier, are they high frequency, medium frequency, or high loyalty? Segmenting, using this wealth of detail to segment your customers into useful buckets, useful in the context of your business strategy or your marketing campaigns. That's really where the payoff starts becoming obvious, is being able to engineer campaigns or programs or offerings at a much more granular level, much more targeted level, and with a much higher probability of connecting with that customer. So if you're going to run an LTO, and it's a limited time offer that you've run before, those customers that you do have information on that have purchased that LTO in the past when you've run it previously, they might very well want to know from you that the LTO is going to start next week and it's going to run through the month of December or whatever. So using the information that you can glean from these various source systems and then use it to target specific messaging. It could be a limited time offer. It could be, the Beaujolais that is only it only hits the market in the fall, in November, and certain customers really love certain Beaujolais. Then getting that communication out and developing that more intimate relationship. That's really the world that all of this data sets the stage for. The one thing that I would strongly argue you should not do is to use all of this rich customer information to turn them into discounters. And too often I've seen, the payoff of a loyalty program, for example, or some CRM solution being, well, those are the people we're going to discount. And, it always appears oxymoronic to me because, these people have opted into one of your programs. They've shown up more than once. They're showing degrees of loyalty, and they're willing to pay your full retail price. Turning loyal customers into discounters is a way to reduce margin, but I don't know what other objective you actually achieve. I don't know that you get to higher frequencies or anything like that. So the one thing I would implore everyone listening to reconsider is using all of this information to turn retail paying customers into discounters. Now I think we have a question.
I do have a question. Sonia asked if you're able to track the customer last order date as well.
Excellent point. Yes. Now the question of, do you want to make that a dimension? You can certainly go to that trouble of modifying your data posting job to recognize, this customer came back yesterday. I'm going to update that dimension to say yesterday was the last time we saw that customer. A lot of different ways that you could use that, but you don't necessarily have to go to that expense. If short of creating and maintaining that dimension of the last time we saw you, it would be obvious in the stream of data. So if you targeted, if you created a report, targeted a customer and say ran it for the last 52 weeks and included the date on your detail level, it would actually show you the date of the last time the person was on a guest check, right? So there's another way that is really, it's just buried inside the data itself. It doesn't require that you modify your posting job to recognize and maintain a dimensional value. So either way is possible, and good question.
Frank wants to know, when is there a good time to market discounts?
Discounts, if they have a role at all, and I mean that. I know there may be marketing people on this live that will debate this to the end of the day with me. But why do you want to discount? Discount to me could make sense if, for example, I see somebody in my customer grain, I see somebody showing up, but they only show up every 5 or 6 months. And they tend to show up on Wednesday night for whatever crazy reason. Maybe they have a bowling club and they go bowling on Wednesday and they come in before bowling or whatever. I can see discounting trying to move up a person that's not showing loyalty, that's not showing frequency, trying to motivate them to increase how frequently they come into the restaurant. I think that could be a legitimate use of a discount. But beyond that, if they're showing up, once a month already or more frequently, discount alone is a dangerous thing to offer that type of person, because if they ever got to the point, like any customer at Bed Bath & Beyond knows, they're not going to go to Bed Bath & Beyond without that 20% coupon, right? And so if you're not careful, you turn that loyal customer who's already coming in every week or every month into a discounter. And then their behavior modifies, like, oh, well, I love going there, but I don't have my coupon, so I'm not going there today. And I know personally, I do that with Bed Bath & Beyond all the time. Do you have any other questions?
I do not see any other questions.
Awesome. Well, I lied. That wasn't the last commercial. The Mirus User Conference, man, oh man, we're already planning it, fall of 2019. For those who missed it this year, we held it in Houston, the first time in over a decade we held it in Houston. And a big success, I think, all around. We had a great time, a lot of new faces in the crowd. And certainly, as it relates to the customer grain or any other analytic, any other studying of the data that you might be interested in, I think MCON is uniquely positioned to provide that type of community of folks who are analyzing the same type of data you are and have all kinds of personal experiences themselves as to how it all works. So just a plug, if you're looking to get sharper and better at techniques and style for analyzing things, MCON is definitely worth your time. And of course, this year will be our 20th anniversary. So we'll have all sorts of, global trip giveaways. And oh, no, we won't. We won't do that. All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm happy to complete our inaugural Facebook Live session. We would love it if you interacted with us across the various social media platforms. We're always interested in input and your experiences. What have you been able to achieve? And the world's looking to learn, and Mirus clients are well ahead of the curve. So please reach out and let us know what works on these social platforms, what doesn't work, and we look forward to seeing everyone soon. Thank you.